Under the Crown Prince's order, Laria was forced into a blind date with a stranger. Her first meeting with her fiancé was an absolute nightmare. The man was none other than Xenox Crassium, the very man who had kidnapped her 3 years ago. The fox tribe Laria belonged to called her a failure because she couldn't transform properly. At most, she could only turn into a small fox with fluffy white ears. But those happy times didn't last long, as Laria struggled desperately to turn back into a human. Just when she was at the lowest point of her life, Xenox of the Black Wolf tribe discovered her and abducted her. Laria was trapped as a pet fox for 6 months before she finally managed to escape that mansion. Even so, Xenox spent 3 years searching for his beloved fox, the fox he called Whitey. One day, during his search, he asked the first person he met for help, which played right into fate's hands. Laria refused, unaware that due to the Crown Prince's interference, she would end up engaged to Xenox anyway. According to the Crown Prince's order, she was destined to become the tragic bride of her kidnapper. Laria couldn't let Xenox discover she was a beast man, or he would learn the truth. Xenox told her he had managed to dig up some clues about his favorite fox, Whitey. This news terrified Laria, as she feared Xenox had already seen through her disguise. At the moment, this black wolf seemed very gentle to her, and she couldn't understand why everyone thought he was so cold and ruthless. For a long time, Laria Rohan tried to learn how to turn back into a human, but she just couldn't do it. Beastmen are those with a mix of human and animal blood in their veins. Long ago, they were called a new race that appeared out of nowhere and were subjected to judgment. But after a series of wars and conflicts, they succeeded in becoming the dominant force in society. Now, they're either in human form or at most have ears and tails. Laria Rohan was angry because she had lost to the wolf tribe in transformation ability. Every time she was at a fox tribe meeting, she could hear whispers behind her back, and she had truly had enough. Everyone thought she was a pathetic white fox mutant and felt sorry for her father, Count Rohan. Laria wished she could at least grow a tail or ears, no matter the size. In extreme frustration, she tried to turn into a fox, and this time she actually did it. A frantic energy ignited in her chest, and her body glowed, preparing to transform. A few seconds later, a cute little fox with fluffy ears and the tail she had dreamed of stood where Laria had been. The girl hadn't expected to turn completely into an animal, which scared her a little. Modern beastmen couldn't fully transform. They only had tails and ears. Laria should have been the same, but reality had other plans. She hadn't turned into an adult fox, but a cub, and her family would surely mock her. But that didn't matter now. She needed to change back and then hurry home to figure out the situation. Laria tried to transform, but after about 10 attempts, she still couldn't shake off the animal form. Suddenly, the little fox girl felt the world around her go pitch black. The carriage she had arrived in was too far away, and Laria didn't know how to get home. Just as she was pondering, a giant man's hand suddenly grabbed her. Laria didn't know how to break free from the stranger's hand, and worried she wouldn't make it home tonight. The man clearly liked the little fox and didn't intend to let it go. So Laria decided to attack, biting him to tell him he had to let her go. Xenox handled her attack with ease and stuffed the little fox into his inner pocket. He announced they were going home, and from that day on, the little fox would be his pet. Laria considered this a kidnapping, realizing she couldn't return home in this state. 3 years later, Laria arrived at a tea house, but she was afraid to go in. She was there to meet her fiancé, whom she had never met, but the person inside was none other than Xenox. Laria never imagined she would encounter Xenox Crassium at a pre-wedding meeting. She had absolutely no idea that her past kidnapper would turn out to be her future husband. Laria had to spend the evening with this man without revealing her true identity. They already knew each other's names and had even lived together, but pretending to be strangers was torture. With a hint of unease, Laria introduced herself to Xenox using her real name, Laria Rohan. On the table, she saw a flyer that perfectly described a white fox named Shiro that Xenox was looking for. Laria recalled when Xenox first took her in and treated her as his little pet. He had always treated her so gently, which was why he was going crazy over the missing fox. Over time, Laria began to feel that Xenox was a man full of tenderness and extremely attractive. She got used to his touch, his caresses, and never thought Xenox would do anything bad. But suddenly, Xenox hit her with his magic, and Laria's body felt like it was on fire. Xenox was too attached to that fox. He whispered through the flames that it would be with him forever. He had little brutal idea that the runaway fox was now sitting in front of him as his bride. Xenox's voice pulled Laria back to reality, and out of fear of discovery, she spilled coffee all over herself. The man was about to bring up the fox, but Laria froze completely. She grabbed the missing fox flyer and started using it to wipe up the coffee. Xenox's twisted love and his burning magic were just Laria's hallucinations. The heroine pretended they were strangers and asked for the man's name. Xenox Crassium, he said, a name she knew all too well, but to Laria, his voice sounded too weary. The rare blood of the Black Wolf tribe flowed in this man's veins, and they had always been at war with the White Fox clan. Xenox was the head of the Crassium family and the only Grand Duke bloodline in the entire empire. The Black Wolf lineage within him was so strong that Xenox could only find meaning in life on the battlefield. On the battlefield, people spoke of him as if he were a savage who ate beast men. Everyone knew these rumors, but the Xenox that Laria had lived with for 6 months was completely different from the image in the stories. She saw the real him, completely unlike the terrible rumors spread by jealous jerks. Xenox realized the blind date with Laria was arranged because she belonged to the White Fox tribe. So the heroine was forced into a beauty pageant, and Xenox faced a similar situation. The male lead looked annoyed, saying he had no interest in getting married. Xenox simply murmured that Laria was just like Shiro. She choked on her coffee again, completely stunned. She pretended to know everything about the missing little fox from the flyers plastered all over the city. Laria whispered hopefully to Xenox that thanks to his efforts, the little fox would surely be found. The male lead just responded sharply that he had to find Shiro no matter what. Suddenly, a flustered man rushed into the coffee shop and told the owner that Shiro had been found. Xenox rushed out without even saying goodbye, while Laria knew that wasn't the real Shiro. It was something else, because the real Shiro was speaking to Xenox right at that moment. With some free time, Laria decided to visit Mr. Surike. Surike, a crow beast man, got straight to the point, saying Xenox suspected someone was investigating him. Since escaping from Xenox, Laria had been watching him, pursuing her own objectives. More specifically, she was investigating the fire that had swept through the Crassium estate. On that terrible day, 3 years ago, intruders broke into Grand Duke Xenox's mansion. These guys were targeting a rare heirloom of the Crassium family. This treasure contained powerful energy sufficient to unlock the immense potential of beastmen. That magical Crassium family relic was currently in the hands of Laria's brother, Zurike. Xenox was desperately searching for the little fox Shiro to reclaim his family treasure. The intruders were still at large, so Laria's family could be in big trouble. After that conversation, Laria ran into Xenox unexpectedly again, and she had to keep her secret. The heroine was terrified that the Duke had seen through her disguise and discovered she was the little fox. But Xenox simply asked for her help in finding the cub that still hadn't been found. Laria was at a loss. She would have to search for herself while playing the role of a stranger. Just minutes ago, Laria had left Surike to go shopping. She immediately regretted not going straight home. On this rainy night, she bumped into Xenox, who was covered in blood and leaning exhaustedly against a wall. This unexpected encounter made Laria drop her umbrella, and she needed to quickly mask her panic. Seeing Xenox still searching for his pet, even in such heavy rain, a wave of sympathy welled up in her heart. The Duke looked exhausted, and through the curtain of rain, you could see the hope draining from his eyes. He thought Laria was the missing Shiro, but she quickly brought him back to his senses. She tried to pretend she didn't see the blood on the ground and on Xenox. Out of kindness, Laria offered to help the Duke treat his wounds. Xenox told her not to worry, saying it was someone else's blood. Normally, Xenox would make a huge fuss even if his little fox had a tiny scratch. Laria couldn't just let him leave covered in blood, so she handed him a handkerchief. The Duke was suspicious of her concern, but she insisted that she wouldn't leave unless he took the handkerchief. Xenox suddenly grabbed her hand, and Laria was terrified, fearing he would recognize her on the spot. She pointed out that he was being rude, and Xenox finally snapped out of it. Laria realized the problem was her fluffy ears and decided to hide them before Xenox saw them. The Duke noticed, but he didn't delve into who she might be, simply thanking her for her concern. Before, when Laria lived at his estate, Xenox always smiled at her, but this smile was different. Almost as a last resort, he asked her to help find the little fox Shiro. Xenox and Laria's hands were intertwined, and she hadn't expected to be so close to her kidnapper. Laria felt the Duke was suspicious, and she needed to stay alert to avoid accidentally slipping up. Xenox realized she was from the White Fox tribe, which meant she should know their habits well. It is well known that beastmen usually inherit traits from their animal ancestors. Laria wanted to refuse, but Xenox offered her a generous reward. After the search, he showed her a pendant with a magic stone, and that was when Laria understood the meaning behind that sly smile. To her, it seemed Xenox was searching for her so desperately only because of that family heirloom. There have been a large number of false reports about Shiro sightings recently, but they all turned out to be traps. Xenox had recently received a threat claiming they had kidnapped Shiro, but it turned out not to be Shiro at all. Laria needed to abandon the search, because if Xenox discovered her true identity, her entire family would pay the price. The heroine confessed that due to wedding preparations and such, it would be difficult for her to help with the search. Xenox was quite annoyed that Laria couldn't make time for his request. He declared that when she finally had time, he would definitely contact her again. Laria agreed, but didn't really consider the consequences of them searching together. She felt quite good, thinking Xenox didn't suspect she was his missing thing. But his creepy smile haunted her, and she tried to shake off the bad feeling. Xenox bade Laria farewell, saying he would see her next time, and then set off to meet the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince of the Flander Empire, the Golden Deer himself, was Ishwell. To everyone's shock, Duke Xenox announced that he had finally met his destiny today. He even asked Prince Ishwell to help him plan his wedding to Miss Laria Rohan. After meeting with Xenox, Laria was able to return to the Rohan family estate. Just then, Laria's brother, Helden Rohan, returned home. He was a snake beast man from the North Sea and also the Crown Prince's personal physician. Seeing him, Laria gasped, completely unexpected that her brother would appear at this time. She wondered if Helden had been fired, but he assured her he was just taking a few days off. Helden came home late that night, and when he found his sister missing, he was terrified. Laria had to admit to her strict brother and the servants that she had gone to a pre-wedding meeting. Helden was furious now, wanting to know if Laria suddenly wanted to get married or if their parents were forcing her. During the argument, he learned from his sister that her partner was Duke Xenox Crassium. Helden prepared to take out that madman Xenox to stop the marriage from happening. Laria pulled her brother back to reality, explaining that killing a member of the royal family would be considered treason. But she understood Helden's motives, as foxes and wolves had always been at odds and despised each other. Her brother didn't understand why Crown Prince Ishwell wanted to bind Xenox's life with Laria's. He decided to handle the situation himself and told Laria to stay away from the Crassium family. He couldn't let her marry a guy who was completely obsessed with his own hobbies. The heroine knew that Duke Xenox Crassium would never agree to a marriage ordered by the Crown Prince. But then she received a letter from the Crown Prince stating that another meeting with her fiancé had been arranged. The Crown Prince insisted that Laria attend because Duke Crassium was looking forward to seeing her. Laria never thought she would return to her former kidnapper's home so soon. That very day, she began preparing for the upcoming meeting with Xenox. The servants couldn't help shedding tears, feeling extremely sorry for their mistress. Laria tried to comfort them, explaining that she was just going for a talk, not to her death. But the servants believed the rumors that Duke Xenox was a monster who preyed on beastmen. They thought Xenox had completely lost control recently, and besides being a jerk, had become totally insane. Laria realized that rumors about a genetic disease in the wolf tribe causing aggression had spread like wildfire. She explained to the servants that although Xenox was a bit eccentric, he had his good points. Amidst tears and remorse, the servants let Laria go to her unexpected date. According to Crown Prince Ishwell's order, Duke Xenox personally came to the estate to pick up Laria. The heroine never imagined she would bump into her kidnapper right at her own front gate. Although Xenox showed exceptional care and consideration for the lady, it was clear he wasn't sincere. As soon as Laria got into the carriage, she discovered those stones that allow you to use any magic. Laria hoped the journey would end quickly because she was afraid Xenox would discover her secret on the way. Laria asked the Duke why the Crown Prince had summoned her if the blind date hadn't been successful. Xenox didn't reveal everything, only saying that people thought Laria was his fiancée. Because he had been searching for the fox, he hadn't been to the palace for a long time, so no one had heard from him. The Duke declared that his main goal was to catch the little fox Shiro. The heroine immediately told him she was unhappy that he was using someone else to replace the missing fox. Xenox disagreed with her because his favorite fox was only Shiro and no one could take her place. Laria couldn't shake the feeling that all this man wanted was the family heirloom. The thought that the Duke might recognize her as his pet gave her the creeps. Laria said she hoped the fox would be found soon, but the Duke was 100% certain of it. He added that he had almost caught his little fox by the tail, which made Laria extremely anxious. The Duke smiled slyly and said he would soon verify his theory. During these 3 meetings, Laria hadn't done anything suspicious, but worry lingered in her mind. She could see the suspicion about her identity in Xenox's cunning gaze. But the look in his eyes during their first meeting was somewhat different, as if Xenox hadn't noticed anything. Although white foxes were rare, there were still several hundred of them. None of them, or any other beastmen, could fully turn into their animal forms. Currently, Laria was the only one who had reached this level, and even her family didn't know about it. Xenox saw the worry and anxiety in Laria's eyes and asked her what was wrong. She reassured him, explaining that being with the Duke felt better than ever. Xenox promised her that, just like before, he would give her anything to make her feel comfortable. Years ago, the Duke had given his pet special care. Xenox was too nice, so he couldn't make any friends except for that little fox. Laria thought that if he had friends, they would bleed him dry. They wouldn't be able to stand it when Xenox turned into a total mother hen. After a while, Duke Xenox's carriage arrived at his dukedom. The male lead assured Laria that he would personally explain the whole situation to Lady Rohan. The heroine just couldn't work up the courage to tell her mom about the wedding plans with Crasium. Xenox apologized for the trouble caused and announced that wedding preparations would begin tomorrow. Before that, he planned to visit His Highness with Laria. Stepping into the dukedom, Laria realized she had never seen such a beautiful place. A massive energy barrier was clearly visible above a tower, protecting the entire dukedom. Laria felt scared because everywhere she went, she could feel the energy of a powerful mage, someone who might expose her. She had stayed in this palace for years, and this was the first time she had felt this way. Her whole body began to tremble, just like the first time she met her kidnapper. Soon, Xenox and Laria arrived for their audience with Prince Ishwel. Laria showed no nervousness in front of the prince and introduced herself politely. Xenox left her alone with the prince because His Highness had called him away before the entrance. Ishwel suggested they pick a date for her and the Duke's wedding together. Laria thought the wedding with the Duke was a cruel joke, so she couldn't believe what she was hearing. She left the prince feeling unwell. The idea of marrying her kidnapper messed with her head. Before she left, Ishwel told her the ceremony would be held at the Crasium Manor. He said His Majesty was very excited about the wedding and had even sent invitations to all the families. Laria realized her parents would receive the letter about her engagement to the Duke, and they would never forgive her. When she saw Xenox, she told him what Prince Ishwel had said, but Xenox just soothed her. The male lead suggested they move to another place so they could talk without being watched or overheard. In the garden, he explained to Laria that no one would believe nothing had happened between them. He said he tried to explain the situation to the crown prince, but the guy completely misunderstood. Laria believed Prince Ishwel pushed for their wedding and sent letters to everyone so the wedding couldn't be canceled. Xenox tried to tell her that His Highness had political motives for their marriage. The Crasium family was the only Grand Duke family in the Empire, possessing immense wealth and power. Furthermore, Xenox possessed royal blood through his mother, a princess. Count Rohan's power was just a title, and that family wasn't exactly wealthy. Therefore, marrying Laria could become a burden for Xenox and his family. Through this alliance, the ruler wanted to keep the Crasium family in check and fulfill a long-held wish of the crown prince. For years, Crown Prince Ishwel and his allies had wanted peace between the wolf and fox tribes. To sabotage these plans, Laria considered having her brother start a rebellion. Suddenly, Xenox interrupted her thoughts, proposing that they get engaged first. You can't get married without getting engaged, and the protagonist could use this as an excuse to buy some time. They would break off the engagement later, and Xenox was prepared to compensate Laria generously for it. The girl was unsure, but the Duke mentioned mentioned he would send her precious gemstones every month. Throughout the engagement, she could pick the weight and size of each gemstone. Xenox promised to send as many gemstones as there were months of engagement. When the protagonists broke off the engagement, Xenox would gift Laria a damn diamond mine. This offer thrilled Laria, and for her own reasons, she couldn't refuse. She even suggested they get engaged more than once, and he fully agreed. Later, Xenox and Laria's carriage arrived at the Rohan family estate. Laria didn't want to tell the Count and Countess about Xenox's plan. It would scare them. First, she and Xenox needed to concoct a story, a way to play a role in front of her parents. They didn't even get a chance to brainstorm because the Count and Countess burst in. Laria's mom was fuming after reading Crown Prince Ishwell's letter. She was going crazy because her daughter had secretly met with Crassium and decided to marry him. Xenox apologized to Laria's parents for being late and suggested they discuss the contents of the letter in detail over lunch. Laria immediately started worrying that her mom might slip something bad into the Duke's tea out of spite. Her mother's name was Samara Rohan, and she was a snake beast man from the North Sea. She was furious about the situation, but Xenox explained that the letters were a surprise to him and Laria as well. Laria's father, the White Fox shifter Theodore Rohan, admitted he was surprised by the contents of the royal letter. Duke Xenox paused for effect and then dropped the bombshell, saying his relationship with Laria was serious. Samira and Theodore Rohan were completely speechless, dumbfounded. Xenox went on to say that he and Laria were planning to get engaged as soon as possible. Samira was struck by a fit of rage, thinking the Duke had something on her daughter. The heroine and Xenox needed to calm things down quickly to avoid stirring up a hornet's nest. Laria was terrified that Xenox and her future diamond mine would be in danger, but she couldn't tell her mom that this engagement was just an act and would be canceled later. She hugged Xenox tightly, taking control of the situation, and announced that she and the Duke had fallen deeply in love. She convinced everyone present that it was love at first sight, a whirlwind romance. Samira was obviously skeptical, asking Laria what exactly she found attractive about Xenox. Thinking back to her past life, the heroine said the master understood her very well and always gave her what she wanted. Xenox always took care of her, as she never felt unimportant. She briefly told everyone about all the good things she had noticed about Xenox when she was a little fox. Samira and Theodore couldn't understand how she could fall in love with a man with such a terrible reputation. After talking with the family, Xenox went home, leaving Laria alone with her thoughts. All night, the heroine couldn't figure out why her parents were so opposed to her and Xenox. She was desperate to know why everyone thought Xenox was a bad person unworthy of love. If not for one incident between her and the Duke, Laria would have thought he was a real jerk. That night, she dreamed of the day Xenox first brought her to the Crassium manor. Back then, he had no feelings for the little fox and told the staff to just throw it in some corner. Laria was angry because she had been captured for no reason and locked in a dark room. The heroine was plotting to escape the Crassium family manor as soon as possible. She knew she would soon turn back into a human and no longer be a pet. Laria tried to convey that she was a beast man, but every attempt failed. Days passed, and she couldn't turn back, and all hope was shattered. When she tried to write about herself in a notebook, they just joked that she had learned to read and write. Laria couldn't stand living there anymore because she was getting more used to being a fox every day. She was afraid she would completely forget she was once human. Laria knew Xenox wasn't interested in her, and one day she decided to escape the manor. When she found the exit, she saw Xenox hunting something invisible in the dark. She thought the guy was completely crazy to tear apart his own house like that. But then something pounced on Xenox, and he fell face down on the ground, completely unconscious. Laria felt sorry for him, completely forgot about escaping, and decided to help Xenox. She pressed against his chest, hearing his heartbeat and breathing, and she calmed down. After that, the relationship between her and Xenox took a 180-degree turn. They became inseparable. Before that, he ignored her completely, and only the servants would pay attention to her. The rest of her life was etched into her soul with a warm glow, and she happily accepted Xenox's crazy plan. From that day on, she decided to trust him completely, hoping he wasn't the monster everyone said he was. That same night, Laria's worried brother, Held and Rohan returned to the manor. Before he even entered the door, he heard that Laria was going to marry the Duke. Samira told him that the Duke and Laria were in love with each other, but instead of announcing a broken engagement, the lovers wanted to get engaged. Heldon began to feel there was some kind of blackmail involved. Laria's mother had the same thought, but seeing her daughter's expression, she knew she was very serious. According to Laria, her mother told her brother that Xenox was very kind and considerate, and that he really understood her. Heldon couldn't understand how his sister could fall in love with a war-obsessed maniac. Just the thought of Laria and Xenox being in the same room made his skin crawl. He decided he had to break them up, but then Laria might hold a grudge against him. Mom agreed with Heldon, thinking that doing so would only add fuel to the fire of their love. The parents had been considering this matter for some time, and they came up with a solution that would solve the problem without making Laria hate them. The next time Samira saw Xenox, she would secretly give him a potion that would make him stop loving their daughter. After that, the whole family would rally around Laria to help her get over the pain of her first unrequited love. Heldon agreed to the plan, so all they had to do now was find this magical potion. Samira told him that Theodore was a potion master and he would be responsible for brewing it. The next day, Laria was thinking about her engagement to Xenox and hoping to expedite the matter. All the recent letters were asking if the wedding rumors were true, which wasn't surprising considering it involved the Duke of Chrysium. While sorting through a pile of letters, Laria found an invitation to a Fox clan meeting. The meeting was to be held in 3 days, which was the perfect excuse to see Xenox without drawing attention. Thanks to the Duke's gems, Laria could now use magic, so she planned to quell all the gossip about her within the Fox clan. The Fox clan was born with magic, but occasionally foxes without magical abilities appeared. Laria was one of them, and she had heard rumors all her life that she was a freak who couldn't transform. Her family had always worried about her, so they never let her participate in Fox clan activities. Because of this, Laria grew up without facing ridicule from society or other foxes. Now she wanted to make some mage friends so they could gather information and conduct experiments together. For the first time in years, she agreed to attend a clan gathering. She set off to prepare for the meeting and ran into members of the Rohan family outside her room. They looked very suspicious, but tried to say they were just passing by. Laria couldn't be bothered to investigate and announced to them that she was going to the Fox clan meeting. 3 days later, her parents were worried she was using this as an excuse to see the Duke of Chrysium. Laria told her family she wanted to make friends with the foxes and showed them the invitation. A tear rolled down Theodore's cheek, and her father asked Laria to make friends with him instead, since he was also from the Fox clan. Heldon and Samira thought Laria going to a Fox meeting full of gossip was a waste of time. Laria decided she would rather go see Duke Xenox than attend that meeting, but then Heldon and her parents changed their minds and let her go to the clan event. Her brother told Laria to take a bodyguard and not to go anywhere without one. A few days later, Laria Rohan put on her best clothes for this important event. She felt awkward taking a guard there, but she knew her family was only worried because she had gone missing before. Then her personal guard, Rodette, arrived. He was a dog-like beast man. He looked like a puppy, and Laria doubted whether he could protect her if things got tricky. At that time, the heroine thought this long-awaited Fox meeting would go smoothly. When she and Rodette arrived at the venue, the gatekeeper wouldn't let them in. He declared that neither she nor Rodette were on any guest list. Laria couldn't believe she wasn't on the main list, especially since she knew her RSVP had been delivered to the foxes. She decided not to make a scene and asked the guard to check the list again personally. Together, they found Laria in the middle of the list, and the man apologized, saying it was his mistake. A second later, the peony bushes parted, clearing a path for the arriving guest. On the way to the meeting hall, Laria asked Rodette to help her deliver a letter to the Chrysium mansion. This was a perfect opportunity to get some important intelligence to Duke Xenox. The Chrysium estate wasn't far, so Rodette headed there, leaving Laria alone. The girl walked down several long paths, but still couldn't find her way to the mansion. She stopped amidst the tall bushes and suddenly felt a heavy magical energy. She discovered layers of illusions here, but the magic was full of holes. Even a novice mage like Laria could break through these things effortlessly. Our girl guessed that this test had been prepared for her by her own Fox clan. She broke through the magic blocking the meeting hall and immediately saw a large group of foxes. Everyone present was stunned by Laria's appearance at their meeting. After all these years, they knew her power had only just awakened, far from enough to break through their magical defenses. The whispers of all these strangers made the girl very uneasy. She wanted to find a few familiar faces to chat with, and then she saw a red-haired woman in the crowd. Sienna Haschel of the Red Fox clan had known Laria for many years. Her father, Marquis Haschel, used to run the Magic Council, and Sienna had inherited his vast power. After exchanging pleasantries, the guests noticed Laria and greeted her in a friendly manner. All the foxes invited her to take a seat at the table, but Laria's chair suddenly disappeared. Laria didn't want to make a scene, especially at her first meeting, so she kept her cool. She pulled out a gem, waved her hand, and whispered a spell. When she threw the stone away, a tree grew out of it and then transformed into a chair. The girl wasn't happy because every fox at the party seemed to want to test her magical abilities. One of them accused her of being proud of such basic magic, saying what she did was just a parlor trick. Sienna Haschel was presiding over the scene, and she quickly silenced everyone. She apologized to Laria on behalf of the whole group and thanked her for attending. Sienna's conclusion from this meeting was that even the simplest magic could come in handy. So the main topic of the meeting was all about praising Sienna and how amazing the Fox clan was. Despite having magical geniuses like Sienna, the foxes were still frustrated. If they had the fox bead, they would have dealt with the Wolf clan and Duke Xenox long ago. The foxes wouldn't have to walk on eggshells around other clans, and they could return to their glory days. Eventually, one person present looked at Laria suspiciously and announced that he wanted to find that fox bead. This sacred relic had been missing from their clan for a long time, and this guy was prepared to go to war to get it back. Sienna glanced at Laria, thinking that perhaps someone had been secretly holding onto the bead. The heroine tried hard not to show her anxiety, as she was afraid of exposing her secret. The fox bead was a sacred treasure of the Fox clan, and due to its mysterious power, it could control any magic. This fox bead was recently an heirloom of the Crisium family, and now it was sitting in Laria's stomach. The girl remembered the day she accidentally absorbed the bead into her body. After being kidnapped by Duke Xenox, Laria found the fox bead in the Crisium manor while in the form of a fox cub. Later that night, due to an attack by a villain, she had to swallow it whole. To survive, the heroine tried every possible way to get the bead out, but it just wouldn't leave her body. Thanks to it, Laria could use magic, but on the condition that she had to constantly consume gems. Judging by the conversation around her, they were desperate to get that bead back. Sienna calmed the foxes down and admitted that their clan didn't know the whereabouts of the legendary treasure either. She asked everyone to continue training hard to develop their abilities so they could all catch up to her level. Sienna confessed that she was the youngest mage in the history of the Magic Council, which shocked Laria. The girl began to suspect that this lady could control 3 spells at once because of her bloodline. The young foxes were very jealous of Sienna and the protective magic she always showed off. She had recently started practicing teleportation magic, reducing the preparation time to just 10 minutes. All the foxes were proud of their mistress, but Laria thought that kind of poor performance was nothing to be proud of. Sienna took 10 minutes to teleport to the next room, but honestly, it would have been faster to just walk through the door. The heroine thought that the spell formula wasn't actually that hard to learn. She touched the manuscript with the formula and instantly mastered teleportation. Sienna beamed with pride and told Laria not to fall behind. She warned her not to get too obsessed with it, because the Duke of Crisium didn't like fox magic. Laria didn't believe the sweet words of these people who saw wolves as mortal enemies. She just felt they were jealous. The foxes didn't like one of their own being involved with a black wolf, especially with the crazy rumors about his emotional instability. They thought no sane fox would fall in love with a wolf, especially Xenox Crisium. Suddenly, the butler found Sienna and brought very bad news about a guest's arrival. He was very agitated as he said Xenox was at the manor, which meant Laria's letter had reached him. The butler told the panicked Sienna that Xenox was waiting for Miss Laria Rohan at the back door. Everyone present fell silent. They couldn't even comprehend what was happening. Our girl stood up straight, apologized to Sienna, and prepared to leave. She announced that from now on, she would attend every Fox clan meeting. She threw a blue stone into the air, and the stone created a portal for her. Everyone realized that, unlike Sienna, Laria required no time to prepare the teleportation skill. The portal spat Laria out into the garden, where she lost her balance and fell right into Xenox's arms. The Duke of Chrysium was so close that the heroine felt her heart skip a beat. Just then, her personal guard rushed up, ready to protect her from the big bad wolf. Laria told him she was fine and that Duke Xenox was a close friend. Rodette hinted that this meeting might be risky, and his words confused Xenox. Xenox was upset about her appearing at a gathering of the hostile Fox clan. Laria personally asked Xenox to escort her so they could discuss unfinished business. She looked both flustered and happy, so Xenox decided they should talk somewhere else. Minutes later, they arrived at the Chrysium Manor, with the puppy-like Rodette waiting in the carriage. The heroine hadn't been here since she left, but the gardens and courtyard were exactly the same as before. She always loved watching the yellow sunflowers bloom more each day from the window. Laria had met many good people here, and sometimes she missed this place. As the male lead walked in, the girl felt a heavy magical energy pressing down on her. There were traces of magic around Xenox, and the mansion was filled with stagnant energy. Laria was on edge because of what she felt, and Xenox was annoyed by her suspicious behavior. The butler reported to the Duke that the manor would be cleaned spotless according to his orders. Laria apologized to Xenox and explained that her strange behavior wasn't due to the unpleasant atmosphere. She decided to use magic to tidy up a bit, knowing the Duke would pay her with precious gems. As soon as she cast the first spell, the whole mansion started shaking like an earthquake. Just then, Xenox and the butler saw the heroine release very powerful magic. A few minutes later, Laria explained that someone had placed a curse on the mansion and she had just cleared it. The butler and Xenox didn't respond, and the girl suspected she might have imagined the magic. Everyone present suddenly felt the air in the mansion change, as if Shiro had reappeared. Laria asked Xenox for permission to search the entire mansion for traces of magic. The butler offered to escort her, but Xenox forbade it and took on the task himself. The male lead hugged Laria, and for the first time since Shiro went missing, he showed a sincere smile. The heroine thought that when Xenox was close to her, he unconsciously felt her love for Shiro. At the table, Xenox apologized to Laria for getting too close earlier. The girl didn't mind the gesture at all, because according to legend, they were fated lovers. Xenox was curious about the magic around his mansion and why Laria could handle it so easily. The heroine had never seen such an aura from one of the most forbidden spells, a spell steeped in darkness. Her theory was that an outsider had come to the mansion and placed a curse there. Xenox admitted that lately, he had been having trouble controlling the beast within. They soon found a suit of armor for him that would help suppress his wild nature. When Laria touched the armor, Xenox saw traits of his beloved pet in her. Laria deduced that for a long time, enchanted items had been regularly brought into the mansion. She suggested Duke Xenox hire an experienced mage to avoid any bad consequences. However, the best mages were from the Fox clan, and they wouldn't accept a request from a black wolf. The girl understood this completely, as she herself had once held negative attitudes toward wolves. She found another option and offered her regular assistance to Xenox. The Duke agreed to invite her over a few times a week as long as their engagement lasted. It would be difficult to find excuses to see Laria after the engagement, but she wanted to solve this magic problem as soon as possible. She wasn't doing this for Xenox just out of the kindness of her heart. It benefited her too. She claimed her magic would consume precious gems like crazy, and Xenox would have to pay for her efforts. The male lead agreed to help and was ready to provide her with any amount of gems needed for magic. Later she realized that after the engagement, she would inherit a diamond mine, so she agreed to work for free. Although she couldn't reveal her true identity, she wanted to help her future fiancé in some way. Despite everything that had happened before, Laria was actually starting to like Xenox a little. They spent hours looking for things that could channel magic, but found nothing special. While searching, Laria saw her favorite toy, and a flood of old memories came rushing back. The girl didn't feel any traces of magic or curses in the mansion. There was one more place in the estate that Xenox was suspicious of because of the heavy energy there. Laria was lost in her memories and didn't even notice they had arrived at this room. If we open this door and go up to the third floor, we'll find a place that is basically a blazing inferno. Xenox admitted there had been a fire in the library a few years ago, and it was still a mess. Laria was afraid this room might hide evidence that everyone would discover she had taken the fox bead. Xenox opened the library door, and the heroine pretended to feel dizzy. Noticing her distress, the Duke slammed the door shut, saying he was embarrassed to show such a mess. Laria thought Xenox was lying and that he just wanted to test her true feelings. For some time, Xenox had been experiencing problems, but they calmed down after she touched him. He had been in some internal turmoil lately and seeing things which troubled him greatly. He couldn't figure out how to get rid of these symptoms that were driving him mad. Later, Xenox suppressed some of the symptoms with the fox bead. The moment Laria touched him, he felt the power of the bead from Laria and thought she had somehow been in contact with Shiro. The male lead didn't even realize he was starting to suspect that Laria Rohan was Shiro. He knew his beloved little fox was a real fox, not some kind of beast man. Even a mutant like Xenox couldn't maintain a beast form for more than a few days. If Laria Rohan was that little fox, she should have exposed herself when they first met. Xenox was tormented by terrible thoughts and doubts, regretting leaving Shiro behind. If he had taken the little fox with him back then, Shiro Whitey would be by his side now. He didn't know if his pet blamed the Duke for leaving her alone in the mansion or hated him completely. Shiro had tried to ditch the Duke before, but she only succeeded on the day of the fire. Xenox swore to himself that if he could find his beloved fox, he would never let her go again. After searching the mansion, Laria couldn't work up the courage to see Xenox. She felt the Duke already suspected something when she was trembling in front of the library. Suddenly, her messenger crow, Tsurike, flew into her window with some important news. This was a signal that Laria needed to stop dwelling on useless things and get back to work. Tsurike told the heroine to pull herself together and meet him immediately for something urgent. This time his client was the red fox Sienna from the white fox tribe. Meanwhile, Sienna cast a spell, this time shortening the spatial movement time. She dared not admit she was weaker than the new mage Laria Rohan. Her subordinates acted as if Sienna was some top-tier mage, completely awed by her powerful new spell. They said Sienna would soon reach the top of the Magic Council. Samanda, a high-ranking mage of the council who had studied magic formulas all her life, had never seen anything like it. Sienna was angry that even Samanda had made it into the top 5 of the Magic Council. It took the heroine too long to bring her spatial movement ability up to Laria's level. She was convinced Laria was up to something, so she went to the black crow Tsurike. She ordered Tsurike to find the right person for her mission. Tsurike recommended the best expert, conveniently failing to mention that the person was the white fox Laria Rohan. Sienna asked the girl to take off her hood, but the stranger said her principle was to keep her identity secret. Sienna didn't know how to trust someone who wouldn't even show their face. Tsurike reassured her, explaining that his company only recommended thoroughly vetted people. Sienna demanded the expert prove their skills so she could truly trust them. A worried Laria explained that she wasn't strong enough, so she had to withdraw from the mission. Sienna snapped at her, saying the client had the final say here. Just then, with Tsurike's permission, the heroine took the best expert away. She created a spatial portal without even needing any preparation time. Sienna's spatial magic transported the girl to another place. It wasn't Laria's magic. Sienna and Laria ended up in a training hall to test the heroine's abilities. The red fox lowered her voice and demanded the expert show their best spell. The heroine just wanted to play along with Sienna's tricks quickly and get out of there. The fox gave the girl a hard time, saying she couldn't even handle the simplest spells. Just then, Laria conjured a magic seal in her hand, a basic attack spell set with a triple defensive barrier. The magic destroyed a nearby building pillar, but Sienna remembered the magic of this place was created by top mages. She didn't think this novice could break the pillar's protective properties. Laria was worried she'd have to pay for the building damage, but Sienna reassured her, saying she would cover all costs. After the destruction, the red fox decided on the spot that she wouldn't let this top magic expert slip away. She had been training for months and couldn't even scratch the floor here. But Laria, without any extra training, used a basic spell in one move and destroyed a wall. Sienna apologized for her rudeness and said the Magic Council was handling the building repairs. She didn't know where this guy had been hiding, but she definitely wanted to get her hands on him for her plans. She asked the heroine for at least a name and she gave a fake one, Lily. Sienna liked the name and wanted to finalize the partnership on the spot. Laria flatly refused her, saying she would never take a job from a red fox again. Sienna was desperate to keep her, so she pulled out all the stops and prepared an amazing deal. She offered 10 times the usual pay and said she would cover all extra expenses. As soon as gems were mentioned, Laria accepted the offer without hesitation. The heroine received her first mission, dig up dirt on Laria and stalk her 24/7. Shortly after, Laria went back to Tyrant and accused him of knowing from the start that Sienna was investigating her. The guy admitted that even knowing the situation, he would have called Laria and didn't think he did anything wrong. The heroine told him to notify her in advance about such things in the future, but Tyrant inexplicably got angry at her. He slammed his fist on the table and told Laria she had promised him she wouldn't marry the Duke of Crisium, which was why he was angry. When Laria announced the engagement in the newspaper, Tyrant suffered a huge blow. The heroine admitted it was her fault, and Tyrant offered her a way to make up for his loss. He had a job suitable for Laria to make amends, but she didn't really want to accept it. She listened to all the terms of the job first and found out she had to protect a certain high-ranking noble. A few days later, she learned that this job was related to her fake fiancé, Duke Xenox. When they met Xenox Crisium, he admitted he had been waiting 10 days for this meeting. The job had come in 3 days ago, and Laria had messed up by not asking Tyrant who the client was. She asked the Duke to pretend she was just Lily the bodyguard, not the daughter of a noble family. She was pleasantly surprised that Xenox took her advice and was considering the mansion's security. Xenox noticed a stalker had been following him lately, always appearing when he wasn't paying attention. The male lead knew that with Laria, a top mage, as his bodyguard, he would be safe and sound. A guy had started following him a few days ago, but so far he hadn't made any moves. The male lead led the girl into the mansion and told her he had something very important today. As soon as she entered, Laria saw the servants bowing deeply to her and Xenox. Behind the servants, she saw a wedding dress prepared for Laria and a suit for the Duke. The servants were happy to tailor a fitting gown for His Highness's beloved. They also prepared rings and earrings for the bride as wedding gifts. Laria tried to act cool, as if she were just a bodyguard, but everyone present knew her true identity. Xenox reassured them and announced that she was his important companion, worthy of their utmost respect. He told Laria that today was very important because he was choosing gifts for his future bride. He didn't know what he had done wrong, but his fiancée hadn't looked at him for 10 days. The male lead bought a gorgeous, expensive dress for Laria and promised to try harder from now on. The heroine apologized to the Duke, saying she had been busy with some very important matters. Xenox hoped Laria would think of him every moment, no matter how busy she was. Laria promised to write even when she was swamped. It was crucial to the Duke that his future bride liked the outfit he had spent so much time choosing. Laria's heart began to beat wildly, and she felt a warm flutter inside. She thought she might truly be falling in love with the man who had kidnapped her not long ago. Ever since the library incident, Xenox would panic every time Laria's behavior suddenly shifted. The male lead's conversation was interrupted when Laria sensed a dark, killing intent in the mansion. She told the Duke to get to safety and began to suspect a stalker had broken in. A stranger walked into the estate, and everyone around him was stunned by the sight. It was Laria's brother Helden, furious at Xenox's betrayal. That night, when Laria brought Xenox back and told him the shocking news, the Rohan family's plan began. The family was doing everything they could to ensure the Duke cut ties with Laria completely. They had brewed a potion using top-tier ingredients, so there wouldn't be any nasty side effects. The emotional control effect wouldn't kick in until the target reached a specific point. The target had to be someone from the Rohan family, and Xenox had to say their name after drinking the potion. The Rohan family needed to get the Duke to drink the potion without Laria noticing a thing. If the whole thing was exposed, she would never speak to her family again. Helden was angry that his sister had chosen Xenox out of all the men in the city. Before carrying out the plan, Helden decided to stalk Xenox. He wanted to find the Duke's weakness so the Rohan family could use it later. So he came to the Cresium estate, thinking he had caught evidence of Xenox cheating. He couldn't believe the girl with the Duke was actually his sister, Laria. He had brought a potion to break them up, but was accidentally discovered by Laria. Our heroine made her brother apologize to the Duke for what happened earlier. Xenox hugged Laria and told Helden he forgave the misunderstanding. Even so, the Duke of Cresium still held hostility toward his future bride's brother. Laria tried to explain to Xenox that Hilden was actually not a threat. As a gesture of apology, Hilden announced an invitation for Xenox to visit the Rohan family estate. Laria's family responsibly prepared for the Duke's arrival, cleaning the entire house until it sparkled. Laria Rohan still didn't know her family was planning to curry favor with the Duke. She wanted to wear the dress Xenox gave her, but her mother objected, saying Laria would instantly charm the Duke in that outfit. Her father liked Laria's outfit, but her brother felt it was a bit too revealing. The heroine got annoyed and said if they kept talking, she would change into her pajamas. Finally, the family agreed to the dress because they didn't want Xenox to see her in pajamas. The butler rushed into the hall to announce to the family that Grand Duke Xenox Cressium had arrived. Laria was anxious about Xenox spending the day with her family. The male lead arrived at the Rohan estate in a carriage encrusted with what looked like 1,000,000 jewels. He felt it would be rude to come empty-handed, so he brought a little gift for Laria. All her relatives nearly fainted, as they had expected a very luxurious gift. Xenox agreed to read out the gift list, which included wine, anti-aging herbs, a porcelain tea set, and many other things. The heroine thought the Duke shouldn't have gone to such trouble for her family. The gentleman just shyly apologized and suggested Laria accept only one thing: the deed to a villa at a luxury resort in the south. He had already transferred the villa to Laria's name and said the whole Rohan family could use it for vacations. Laria's parents and Hilden were angry because the Grand Duke's generosity completely disrupted their plans. Laria felt very frustrated, but she had to play the role of the bride until the day ended. She flusteredly hugged Xenox, thanking him for the exquisite gift. That hug caught her whole family off guard, and Laria immediately felt a dark aura radiating from them. Samira tried to lighten the mood and serve the guest her favorite dessert. It was Laria's least favorite cookie, a snack they never served when she was at the estate. Samira smiled and admitted she baked these cookies specifically for the Duke. Seeing her mother smile, Laria suspected she was plotting something against Xenox. She wanted to stop the Duke from eating the cookie, but it was too late. The Grand Duke ate a cookie and thanked Madame Samira. He said the cookies were delicious and, out of politeness, offered one to the Countess, but she refused. Xenox also began to suspect something fishy was going on, but he didn't show it. He picked up a cookie and handed it to Laria, testing her family. It turned out that to trigger the love potion, the target must be someone you love or a member of the Rohan family. After eating the food containing the potion, Xenox needed to say the name of a Rohan family member. As soon as he finished speaking, Samira was ecstatic, thinking all conditions had been met. The potion was in the cookies, and Samira made this specific kind because Laria wouldn't touch them. After lunch, Samira told the Duke that her daughter should marry someone who truly loved her. She already knew the answer, yet she asked the guest if he loved her daughter. Xenox was a bit flustered and admitted he had loved Laria since the first time he saw her. To all the Rohan family members, it seemed the potion hadn't worked and all their efforts were in vain. They began to suspect the servants had forgotten to add the potion to the cookies. Something was wrong, so Samira decided to test the potion's effect herself. She wolfed down several cookies, not even needing to say the name of any family member. A second later, she flew into a rage and told her husband she wanted a divorce immediately. Theodore, in tears, tried to tell Samira it was the potion acting up, but she wouldn't listen at all. Hilden comforted his father, saying they could use the antidote and Mom would return to her senses. Hearing this, the heroine realized her family had tried to drug Xenox. Hilden apologized to their guest and asked him to step outside while he talked to Laria. Her brother admitted their parents had brewed a potion to make Xenox stop loving Laria and put in the cookies. Dad guaranteed the potion was good for him and wouldn't have any side effects. Only now did Laria understand why her parents and Hilden hadn't been pressuring her to break up with Xenox recently. She had been happy thinking they respected her choice. Samira proudly told Theodore she was leaving the mansion tonight, divorcing him, and leaving forever. Theodore had brewed the potion for Xenox, and in his current state, he couldn't prepare the antidote. Laria sympathized with her family and announced she could brew the antidote herself, as she had the ability. She knew the potion wouldn't work on Xenox, because their engagement was just a temporary arrangement. Grand Duke Xenox Cressium definitely didn't love her, as his heart only held the shadow of Shiroyati. She hadn't expected to fall so deeply in love with Xenox herself. Making any kind of love potion required basic magical skills. Hilden was an excellent doctor, but he had no magical ability, so he couldn't brew such a potion. The only people who could do it were Laria and her father Theodore, as they were magic users. Fortunately, our heroine knew the recipe and brewed 2 bottles of antidote within minutes. The first bottle was for Samira, and after drinking it, she returned to her senses. Her husband Theodore didn't look so terrible anymore, and she no longer wanted to leave him. Laria went to send Duke Xenox home and promised her family she would have a good talk with them when she returned. She always knew her family liked to make a fuss, but this situation was too much. Her parents tried to break her and Xenox up, and she would soon demand an apology from them. She went to the living room to find the Duke, but he was nowhere to be seen. Instead, a small black wolf pup was sitting on the floor, and it immediately exposed itself. It was Duke Xenox, who couldn't figure out why he had suddenly turned into an animal. Laria was an experienced mage, so she didn't need an explanation, as she immediately understood this was a side effect of the love potion. She felt genuinely sorry for Xenox that her family had stooped so low. In Laria's sad eyes, Xenox saw the look he cherished in his heart. Whenever Shiroyati got into trouble, she always gave him a similar look. The Duke was convinced Miss Rohan was connected to Whitey's whereabouts, because every time he was near her, he felt a strange sense of déjà vu. Laria brought the antidote to Xenox, but the poor guy couldn't drink it because of his paws, so she decided to feed him carefully by hand, just as the Duke used to feed her. Laria's reason told her this wasn't a real wolf pup, but the tall and majestic Xenox. She confessed to him that his form as a black wolf pup was just too cute. The Duke got angry because Laria said that, so she held him up to a mirror to let him see his reflection. Now she understood how Duke Xenox felt when touching his little fox, Shiro. The little black wolf didn't understand why he had suddenly lost his human form. Laria soothed him, explaining that the antidote would soon help him return to his original state. She asked Xenox how he felt after drinking the antidote, and he admitted he didn't feel any different. The girl was afraid her beloved would never turn back. She worried she had messed things up and promised to find a solution as soon as possible. She became unusually depressed, and the wolf pup tried to comfort her by rubbing his head against her. Xenox asked Laria to hide him in her family's estate until he turned back. If news of his condition got out, Cressium's enemies would seize the opportunity to bring him down. Laria was thinking the same thing, and the Duke expressed his gratitude for her help. Afterward, she returned to her family and accused them of using that potion behind her back. Samira hoped to separate Laria and Xenox before Laria got her heart broken. Her parents were prepared to apologize to the Duke, but only on the condition that Laria break off the engagement. In their view, no parent in their right mind would want their child to marry someone like that. Theodore saw that the love potion didn't work on Xenox, which meant the man didn't love Laria at all. The girl asked her father if the potion had side effects, like turning people into beasts or something. Theodore said incorrect conditions could lead to malfunctions and side effects, but those cases were rare. He asked his daughter to imagine a love potion that only worked on living people. The heroine thought of Duke Xenox and realized that if the person drinking the potion was alive, their brain might be dead. For Xenox, the conditions were contradictory because he didn't love Laria. He loved Whitey, and Whitey was Laria. It was entirely possible that the Duke's love for his pet fox caused him to turn into a beast. But to him, Whitey must look like a thief who stole a family heirloom. If he had any feelings for that little fox, it was purely hostility and hatred. Her father comforted her, saying most side effects would disappear after a few days. Laria was happy that Xenox would definitely turn back to his original form after some time. Meanwhile, the Duke, trapped in the body of a black wolf pup, searched the entire Rohan estate. He was convinced there was some connection between the Rohan family and that little fox named Whitey. Whenever he was around Miss Rohan, he could always feel that fox's fearful energy. It was his only clue right now, but maybe it could help him find Whitey. That night, Laria returned to Xenox and told him he would return to normal in a few days. She also announced that her family, the Rohans, insisted they break off the engagement. Xenox didn't expect his fake fiancée to feel depressed hearing this news. Even though it was a fake engagement, Laria felt she could finally be free from her past kidnapper. Completely. The black wolf pup climbed on her lap and extended his head for her to pet him comfortingly. Whenever Laria fell down, Whitey always let her pet him to cheer her up. The heroine asked the Duke why he was looking for his little fox, which immediately triggered memories of his past. At least half of all the rumors about the Duke of Cressium were true. It was no exaggeration to say that most animals, out of primal survival instinct, didn't even dare to approach Xenox. Recently, the Duke had been increasingly out of control, his mind occupied by terrible hallucinations. In the hallucinations, he saw himself single-handedly ending the war and avenging his beloved parents. He was told the war wasn't over yet and would last for years. On the day Laria found Xenox unconscious, voices told him to tear down his own mansion. When Xenox woke up, he saw his pet fox, Shiro Whitey, walking toward him. Laria, in animal form, snuggled against his leg, trying to bring him back to his senses. The male lead didn't understand why this fox still cared about him after he had been so harsh. A panicked butler rushed in after hearing Xenox fall, but the male lead said it was no big deal. He reflexively grabbed the fox by the scruff of the neck, showing he didn't care. For the first time, he asked the butler what the fox's name was, and the servant replied it was Fluffy. From then on, Xenox had been looking for that fox for no reason. He wondered if she was still as fearless as on that fateful day. Whenever the fox asked him for food, the Duke would drive her away with threats. Despite this, in her fox form, she continued to seek Xenox's attention, but he tried to ignore her completely. One day, the male lead felt a warmth in his heart and personally cooked a meal for his pet. This was the first time Laria had tasted such delicious food made specifically for a little fox at the Cressium estate. But even so, the Duke warned her that if she showed him kindness again, she would regret it. After that, Whitey would sometimes come to find Xenox, but he threatened to turn her into a scarf or knit her into a sweater. Those days passed one after another, but the Duke and Duchess's anniversary changed the relationship between Laria and Xenox. That day, Xenox's life was nearly torn apart by the tragic death of his parents. That day, the young Master's Guard arrived with the report that his parents were no longer of this world. The bodies of the Duke and Duchess were destroyed beyond recognition, and people didn't believe a child could become the leader of the family. Even back then, Xenox decided to eliminate everyone responsible for his parents' death. On their anniversary, the little fox sensed the pain in Xenox's heart and brought him a sunflower to comfort him. This time, the master didn't drive the pet away because he saw support in its eyes. For the first time in years, the little fox Shiro let Xenox pet its head. It was then that the Duke realized the name Fluffy wasn't worthy of such a good pet. He announced the new name Whitey Shiro, and the little fox seemed to like it. Without realizing when it started, having the fox around became part of Xenox's life, and life without Whitey became a living hell. He searched for her in the capital and other cities, but always kept coming back, hoping Whitey might return at any moment. The current Xenox Cressium said he was looking for Whitey simply because he needed her, and these words touched Laria. She tucked the black wolf pup into bed, then returned to her own room to think about the situation. She couldn't believe that Kidnapper was looking for her just because he missed her. Laria tried to convince herself that Xenox only wanted the family heirloom, but his kind actions kept surfacing in her mind. The heroine realized that since Xenox was now living in her mansion, he would need a whole bunch of things. She decided to do a good deed and take him shopping tomorrow. The next morning, she sneaked out of the house with Xenox to avoid her family overreacting. Her parents already hated Duke Xenox, and if they found out he was the one who kidnapped her, they would absolutely tear him to pieces. Laria absolutely could not let her parents or Hilden find out about the kidnapping. The heroine immediately created a portal and teleported to the nearest shop. Today she wanted to buy a portable cage, a new brush, and some warm clothes for her cute Xenox in case the weather got cold. The male lead noticed that since he turned into a wolf, the lady smiled at him more sincerely. He kept following Laria around, even using their engagement as an excuse to get close to her. Last night, while she was asleep, he searched every corner of the Rohan estate and found nothing. He began to think the Rohan family might truly have no connection to Whitey Shiro. So Duke Xenox was back to square one in finding his pet, and he felt very frustrated about it. Laria was startled by Xenox's depressed look, so she took him out of the bag and carried him on her shoulder. Xenox always held Whitey like that, and Laria was trying to mimic his every move. After buying some things for the little Duke, Laria discovered a jewelry store. She was penniless, but Xenox told her to put everything on his family's tab. On the way back, they met His Highness Crown Prince Ishwell. He wanted to talk to Laria privately about Xenox and the progress of finding Whitey. Our heroine was terrified and wanted to slip away, but Xenox demanded the prince explain himself. Ishwell's guards appeared, startled by the talking black wolf pup. The prince demanded Miss Rohan explain why her pet could talk. The girl was sure Ishwell recognized Xenox's voice, but that wasn't the case. Ishwell demanded the wolf pup prove his identity, and that was when Xenox blurted out all his most embarrassing secrets. Xenox quickly explained the situation and asked Ishwell to tell him about the progress in finding Whitey. The young man admitted he recently had a dream where Xenox was holding a white fox and Ishwell had goat horns growing on his head. He believed the dream was an omen. Royal family members with the blood of the golden deer flowing in their veins were born with the ability of foresight. Ishwell couldn't be sure the fox in his dream was Whitey. However, he recently received news that smugglers had started operating again, and they now even had a white fox. There was an auction today where they were trying to sell the fox, and Xenox decided to go there. Laria tried to stop him from going to the auction in his current condition, but Ishwell thought it was a perfect opportunity to sneak in without arousing any suspicion. He didn't know Laria knew why he wouldn't appear at the auction, as she was with Duke Xenox right now. To prevent things from spiraling out of control, she decided to take little Xenox with her to the auction. She was the only one who knew his full situation, so if things got tricky, she could step in to help. Xenox worried Laria would be in danger because of him, and he couldn't help but show it. On the way, Prince Ishwell suggested Laria put Xenox, the black wolf pup, up as an auction item. Black wolves were extremely rare, the kind of thing that would drive smugglers crazy. As an animal, Xenox could more easily snoop around all the white fox cages without raising anyone's suspicion. The little duke liked the prince's idea and told Laria to do it. The security guard at the auction house entrance asked the arriving guests for invitations. Prince Ishwell, already wearing a concealing mask, announced they were there to sell an item. He said they had a precious, rare little thing not seen in a century. Ishwell gave a brilliant sales pitch for the endangered black wolf, and the guard is hooked. The guy was captivated by Xenox's sleek black fur, his golden sun-like eyes, and his young age. He was willing to pay any price just to get this item in his auction. Ishwell offered the guy $50 million, but Laria doubled the price. She thought that when the merchant saw what the little wolf could do, his opinion would change completely. She demonstrated how Xenox could shake hands, sit, and climb on his shoulders on command. The merchant bought Xenox for $150 million and allowed the guests to attend the auction. A few minutes later, a man named Black announced the start of the rare item auction. Laria felt uneasy without the Duke by her side, and Ishwell admitted she was the only one worried about Xenox. Ishwell wondered if the male lead in beast form could find his beloved Whitey, but Laria already knew the answer. Meanwhile, the smugglers threw the white fox into a cage, and she scratched them fiercely a few times. Suddenly, they heard the cage burst open, followed by a small explosion. One of the smugglers fell to the ground, motionless. The cage holding the white fox was destroyed, and the fox was gone. The host unknowingly announced the auction of the next rare lot. White Gull. Just then, Miss Rohan felt that deadly energy she had felt at the Cressium estate. She sensed a wave of magic sweeping through, the kind of magic that could disturb people's minds. She decided to concentrate on casting a spell first, so the guy wouldn't see her true form. She used gems to create a portal and ended up right in the middle of the audience. She didn't feel anything suspicious here, but she sensed a wizard in the hall using forbidden magic. After he was discovered, the magical energy began to dissipate and return to its source. Laria caught it just in time before it slipped away. She warned Crown Prince Ishwell, then chased after the trail of forbidden magic. The mage couldn't believe there was someone in the hall who could resist his devastating magic. He ran through several streets and fell into a trap set by Laria. The man immediately realized the person in the hall had been chasing him to take him down. He couldn't even imagine that his opponent in this battle would be a girl with not much magical experience. Laria chanted a spell, using a magic seal to absorb the guy's forbidden magic. The mage radiated extremely dark, magical energy, exactly the same as what she had seen at the Cressium estate. She guessed this was the guy who had cursed the Duke's mansion long ago. She worried she didn't have enough power to fight that forbidden magic. In this battle, she only had the 10 gems she took from the jewelry store earlier. She launched her first attack and heard the mage's voice. like a man in his 40s. Laria needed to gather all her strength quickly to deal a clean blow to this mage. Just then, the other person pulled out a small vial of dark red liquid and spilled it on the ground. Laria smelled blood and realized he was going to use it to destroy the entire auction house. She couldn't let that happen. There were so many people inside, not to mention the prince and Xenox. Using every last bit of her strength, she chanted a spell and put up a massive protective barrier. That barrier stopped the mage's destructive magic before it could fully form. She exhausted all the crystals she had on her. If that attack hadn't succeeded, Laria would have been done for. That was the strongest magic she had ever channeled at once, bar none. The mage using forbidden magic managed to slip away through the sewers and ended up in some basement. His plan was still on track, just slightly delayed. The mage was Benishan Hasher, the director of the Magic Bureau, and he knew Samando well. He didn't tell the team about his discovery, nor did he mention being thwarted by an uninvited guest at the auction. Meanwhile, Laria returned to the prince as the host began bidding for a rare black wolf pup. He started the bidding at 200 million, even though he had only paid 150 million to get Xenox. During the bidding, Ishwell told Laria about Xenox's nickname, the Executioner. While searching for the little fox in different cities, Xenox had eliminated 100 smugglers. The host announced the appearance of the rare black wolf pup, but instead, the Duke of Cressium appeared on stage. From Xenox's rage, Prince Ishwell realized his foresight was wrong. There was no fox here. The guards attacked the Duke, but he easily snapped their spears in half. All the audience members scrambled to flee, and even the auction host was terrified. A squad of soldiers arrived at the building and arrested the host for running an illegal auction. This made Xenox even angrier, and at that moment, Laria felt the fox orb activate. The girl realized she was about to turn into a fox, so she rushed out. She thought she would never turn into a fox again and had absolutely no idea why this was happening. She tried to hide behind the nearest corner, but she was too slow, and instantly, poof, she turned into the little fox Whitey. After turning into Whitey, Laria bumped into Sarek behind the auction house and asked him for help. Xenox's guards appeared, and then the Duke himself arrived, sensing the orb's energy. He snatched a sword from one of his men and slashed at the tree where Sarek and Whitey were hiding. He demanded Sarek hand over the little white fox, or things would get very unpleasant. But Sarek explained that the Duke had confused him with someone else, and that this little fox wasn't Whitey. Sarek said he had raised this little one since she was small, and she belonged only to him forever. There were thousands of white foxes in the world, and Laria couldn't figure out how the Duke recognized her immediately. Xenox was hostile towards Sarek and prepared to take the little fox by force. Sarek reacted in time, spilling a teleportation potion on the ground. In the few remaining seconds, Xenox managed to shout at Whitey, telling her to come back to him. Laria had never seen such an anxious look on her former kidnapper's face. She wanted to figure out why she had suddenly turned into a fox. If this had happened in front of Xenox, Laria would have been in big trouble. She guessed it had to do with using too much magic in that battle. A few minutes later, her body shook, and she turned back into human form. For the first time, the heroine felt genuinely sorry for the Duke because of his sincere feelings for her. She realized that if he hated her, his face wouldn't show such moving emotion when looking at her. For the first time, Sarek realized the fox the Grand Duke was looking for was sitting right in front of him. During their conversation, the girl asked him to help her find the guy who used forbidden magic. The mage from the Magic Council was in a sorry state after his battle with Laria, and his assistants speculated that the mastermind behind it all was a group of extremely powerful mages. The guy also received a report stating that the barrier at the Crisia mansion had vanished, and that kind of spell isn't easily broken. The mage was convinced that the Grand Duke had been deeply under the influence of that spell for the past year. This person wanted to turn Xeno's Crasium into a puppet and control him completely. Laria returned home, unable to figure out why she was randomly switching between her fox and human forms. She tended to think it was because she had used too much magic that morning. Hilden's brother apologized to her, admitting he was wrong about the whole Xenic incident. Laria decided to stop avoiding her family and had breakfast with them as a gesture of reconciliation for the first time ever. Her parents set an apple before her, symbolizing their apology. Looking at her family's faces, Laria's heart softened, and she decided to forgive their mistakes. Theodore and Samara promised never to provoke Grand Duke Crasium again. Her father confessed through tears that it broke his heart that his daughter had been avoiding him. Her brother felt the most ashamed for disrespecting his sister's choices. From that day on, every member of the Rohan family buried the hatchet. Samara admitted she had no objection to the engagement between the Grand Duke and Laria, but she asked her daughter not to rush things. She wanted the wedding to be top tier, which would require a lot of time to prepare. The next day, Suriki was busy organizing the list of everyone invited to the auction. For him, finding the guy who used the forbidden magic was crucial. Laria recalled that the person had the voice of a middle-aged man and was taller than her. Suriki swore to her that he would find this person at any cost. After reviewing the list for hours, the boy discovered that the person was a member of the Fox clan. A week had passed since the auction house incident. Laria sent letters to Zeno and Ishuo explaining why she had left. She asked them to keep her whereabouts a secret, but she never received a reply. If her brother found out who she was hanging out with, he would explode. Laria couldn't sit still any longer, so she took a guard and headed to the materials shop. She needed to find a type of blue coral to make an instant teleportation potion. Just then, the red fox Sienna suddenly walked into the shop. She and Laria reached for the material at the same time, and it happened to be the last one. Laria's guard stepped forward to defend his lady, claiming she had touched the blue coral first. The other girl's bodyguards started to argue, while our heroine tried to stop them. She asked the shopkeeper if there was another portion of blue coral, also known as blue horn. The shopkeeper told her it wasn't in season, and the next shipment would take about 3 months. Sienna was excited, surprised that Laria was not only proficient in magic, but also knew materials like the back of her hand. She proposed a solution: let the shopkeeper decide who gets the coral. The shopkeeper promised he would give the material to whoever touched it first. Sienna prepared to go straight to another shop, one with better quality materials. Laria decided to yield to this old acquaintance and handed the blue horn to her. Sienna was greatly impressed by the heroine's gesture and promised she owed her a favor. Curious about what potion Sienna was brewing this time, Laria checked her materials. She deduced it was a potion to dye hair blonde, leaving Sienna completely baffled as to how she had been figured out.